Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. And today I have with me Ginelle Testa, author of Make a Home Out of You, a memoir. Ginelle, welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So I'm always interested to learn about the origin story of books. What led you to write your book?
Sure. So it started at NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. So in November of 2017, I decided to start jotting my stories down, and I actually hit 50,000 words with just a bunch of different stories that I had written. They weren't patched together. They weren't cohesive. It was just a bunch of documents that I had written. And then the next NaNoWriMo, I decided to start to patch them together and to flesh them out a little bit. And then years later, I started to realize I could actually make this into a book. It wasn't just patches of stories, but it could really become something more special in a memoir. So yeah, that's how it got started.
Nice. Tell us a little bit about the title. How did you land on Make a Home Out of You?
Yeah, so it took me a really long time to find a title. For years, I was writing the book, even almost got to the point of submission, and I didn't have a title, but the title just came to me one day where I was like, I don't know. I had been thinking and trying to figure out a title, but one day it just popped up where I was like, I tried to make homes in people, in substances, in behaviors. And it took me a long time to figure out how to make a home within myself. And so that title just came to me, and so it just popped up out of nowhere. I'm really grateful that it did, because I couldn't figure one out for the life of me, but it felt sort of like a divine magic inspired kind of thing.
Yeah, I love it when that happens. That's so great.
Yeah, I had to give it space though. When I was trying to force it and figure it out, it wasn't happening. So I had to really give it some years to breathe.
Yeah, I think that is so often true. When we are really trying to push forward, push through something, a lot of times we'll probably get to it faster or better if we just give it some space, give it some breath, air.
Which is so hard for me as someone who's a doer. I want to just get it done. But I think in my creative process, I get a lot from space.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So I always loved hearing how, and authors speak about their own work. And because, when we read or listen to a book, many times, we come up with our own conclusions about what the book is about or what it addresses. But from your perspective as the author, what would you say are the issues that your book addresses?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it's relationships. It's relationships with others, relationships with myself, and my relationships with my body and alcohol. So I guess relationships in general. But yeah, substance abuse is a big trend throughout. And then so is eating disorders and recovering from all of that. So yeah, relationships, substance abuse, and body image / eating disorder are the three main trends.
Yeah. Did you find that really challenging to write about? I mean, these are very vulnerable, personal issues, very difficult for a lot of people to share with the world.
Yeah, it was challenging because with writing, you have to put yourself, for good writing, you have to put yourself back in the scene. You have to think about the smells, the tastes, the sounds, the colors in the room. And when you have trauma or any sort of addictive history or eating disorder, it's challenging to put myself back into that sickness and have to sit in it and sort of experience it. But it was so worth it. The process of writing was really worth it for me.
Oh, that's good. Did you find that it was even just the writing process provided some additional healing?
Definitely. There were some things I hadn't made peace with that I found that I made peace with through the writing. For example, some things that I had done when I was drinking that I felt that I felt bad about, that I felt like I hadn't forgiven myself for. I was able to find forgiveness through my writing.
That's nice. Yeah. Now, you decided to be your own narrator. In fact, at this moment that we are recording this interview, which people won't hear until later. I love that about time and space, crossing through barriers. But you're still recording your audiobook. So tell us a little bit about like why it was important to you to narrate your own and how it's going.
Sure. So I read chapter 27 today out of 31 chapters. I'm going quite quickly, but I think I might re-record some. I'm just like getting the hang of talking a little bit slower. But yeah, it was important to me because the story is so personal. It didn't make sense for anyone else to narrate it but me because I don't know, it's my life. It's kind of hard for a memoir for somebody else to narrate it. I know like a lot of the inflections and like the ways I want to say things and the different things I want to say. So I think it was important for me to do it.
Yeah, that's great. And tell me a little bit about what kinds of responses you have gotten from people that you have shared, even just sharing with like what you've been writing about, because you've been at it for a while, right? As you expressed, been kind of working on this process. What kinds of responses are you getting from the people in your life?
Mostly people thanking me for my vulnerability. I think like whether it's reading the description on Amazon or whether it's reading my full book as an ARC reader, people are just thanking me for like being willing to put my story out there and being willing to be vulnerable with the things that have happened to me, the things that I've done, because it gives them permission to do the same. It gives them permission to be human, to make mistakes, to like be vulnerable themselves. That's sort of the feedback that I've been getting is just thank you, which is really, really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. And it is so what do you think has made it possible for you to step into that vulnerability?
Yeah, I've been practicing it for years online. I have been writing, like I was a dating writer for 3 years. So I wrote over 300 articles for a women's dating website. And I think I got a lot of practice doing that then. And even with like my Instagram experience, I post a lot on Instagram. I post a lot of vulnerable things. So I think I've just been practicing for years and years, like putting myself out there in challenging and vulnerable ways. And so it feels like a natural step to publish a memoir, although it's another layer of vulnerability that I am very nervous about.
Yeah. Have you had any experiences either with like pushback or, where it's felt like that being vulnerable has been especially challenging in that moment?
Yes, I had a men's rights activist who was very interested in my writing, who in like that he hates it and he hates me. And he's created probably 7 or 8 videos about me on YouTube. And some have garnered hundreds of thousands of views about how he hates me and hates that I'm a feminist, fat, queer writer. And, so he has a lot of opinions about me. I've never watched any of his videos, but I know they exist. So yeah, I've definitely gotten pushback from him and his community. I've had like death threats from from his community members, and it was hard for a while to get that, but it doesn't stop me because I think that the stuff that I put out there is important. It's messages that not everybody's getting. Like not everybody talks about their active alcoholism or like eating disorders, and I think they're important topics to talk about.
They are. It's so hard when when people are we as humans are, experience some challenge and it feels like there's either embarrassment around it or it feels like, fear around just even admitting it to ourselves or anyone else. And having people who are willing to share their experiences does make it feel much more like, oh, okay, I can be maybe I can work through this as well. So I think it's great what you're doing.
I actually shared my book to LinkedIn this week, which I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to do because it's very much not safe for work. And all my coworkers follow me on LinkedIn and they've been so supportive and have been giving me that sort of feedback is like, this stuff is taboo because we don't talk about it, not because there's anything wrong with it,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting point. So yeah, it's been nerve-wracking to share, but worth it.
Yeah. So the guy who's seems to have gone on the attack, is that because it's just your content, or is it? Does it seem like it's personal, like that there's somehow connected with people that are mentioned in your book, or did he just find he doesn't want you to be vulnerable? I'm just curious.
I definitely think it's like the feminism aspect is very infuriating to him. I think that like someone who's like loud and not willing to like be quiet, I think is very infuriating for him too. And so, I'm happy if I'm pissing off men's rights activists. I think I'm doing the right thing. So
Yeah, that's great. So clearly he's got some stuff he needs to work through.
yeah. I don't take it personally, but it does feel personal sometimes because from what my friends have told me, he talks about like the fact that I take medication or like, things that have nothing to do with my writing that are just like personal. So yeah, he has a lot of opinions, but
Yeah.
okay.
I wonder. Well, let's just take a short pause and we'll be right back. For readers of Drinking, a Love Story by Caroline Knapp comes an unflinching coming-of-age addiction memoir about one woman's journey to overcome her destructive roots to discover her road to recovery. Born to an abusive mother and a drug dealer father, Ginelle Testa is not exactly set up for success, and her early years are just as troubled as one might expect. By the end of her 13th year, she started experimenting with alcohol and drugs, has fallen prey to anorexia, and has been sexually assaulted. And that's only the beginning of her spiral down into addiction and disordered eating. As Ginelle progresses into young adulthood, she hits several substance-related bottoms. In her senior year of college, after blacking out and ending up naked in her dorm's community shower, she goes to Alcoholics Anonymous and gets sober. But steering clear of drugs and alcohol, she discovers, is not a cure-all. She still has a long way to go before she can truly heal. Raw, relatable, and powerful, Testa's is a riveting tale of climbing up from rock bottom and learning to make a home in oneself instead of in substances and other people. Get your copy of the audiobook Make a Home Out of You, narrated and written by Ginelle Testa. Get it today at amplifyaudiobooks.com. And we're back. So you finished writing this book some years ago, and life has a way of changing and changing us. What's that like for you now as you're reading a book that is about your life, and now you've got all these recent years of growth? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So I was heavily involved in 12-step when I wrote this book, and the whole ending is about, falling in love with 12-step, and that's in, the back of the book, so it's not giving anything away, but I no longer go to 12-step and I still love it, but it's just not a part of my life anymore. And I've found new ways of coping. So I find, my healing journey has just progressed a lot since I wrote the book. It ends like 5 or 6 years ago. So a lot has happened in that time frame. That's really changed, but that's okay. I think of a memoir as a snapshot in time. It's not meant to be a continuation. It's not meant to go on forever. It's supposed to capture a moment in time, and that moment just happens to be over. So
yeah. That's great. So Ginelle, tell us a little bit about like what your aspiration is moving forward with this book, with any other writing that you're doing. Yeah, what do you see coming up?
Sure. So this week, actually, I've been working on a piece for 3 or 4 months that I submitted to Modern Love, the New York Times. That's a dream of mine to be published there. I know they accept very few people, so we'll see. But I actually worked with a Modern Love coach who had been accepted himself. So hopefully, fingers crossed. But I hope to be published, in places like that, HuffPost, just aiming over the next year to write a lot of personal essays to submit to places like that. And I do hope in the future. I started 2 NaNoWriMos ago. National Novel Writing Month. I started another fiction book it's a queer YA love story. So working on that as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And in terms of Make a Home Out of You, what would you love for your readers and listeners to take away from the book? Like what impact would you like to have as a result of your work?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, it's not just strictly sex and love addiction or alcoholism that like people seek meaning and solace in other people. Like I think a lot of us do that. We seek like other people to make us whole. And I think the message that I want from the book is that we have within ourselves the ability to feel whole, the ability to feel healed, the ability to feel like we belong, we're enough. And so I guess I just hope that people take that away, that no matter where they're at, they can feel that way too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, we need that. That's great. And so let's go back to the audiobook production process, and I just want to explore that a little bit further. So is there anything that you would say kind of stands out to you so far about the production process? Anything that was surprising to you so far? As I know you're not done yet.
Yeah, I've never read my book out loud. I've read sections of it out loud. I've heard other people read it out loud in writing groups, but I've never read cover to cover my book out loud. So it's been a really powerful thing to do. And I'm catching some errors, which I'm like, oh, wow, I don't think I would have caught that unless I read it out loud, which is fine. We're in ARC, so it's totally okay. But yeah, it's been powerful to read it out loud. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. When you read through those parts of your life that were especially challenging, painful, do you find what's that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's emotional. There have been times where I'm like, as I'm reading it at a soundproof booth at my work after hours, but people are still in the office. I'm finding that I'm like tearing up or like getting emotional because I'm like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. Like I survived this, or like, wow, I got through this. And yeah, I am finding myself getting emotional sometimes, which is good, I think, for the reading process.
It is. That's great. Yeah. Anything that's that you would say was surprising to you so far?
I guess just how challenging it is to slow down. It's really, really challenging for me to slow down my talking. But I know that it's important so that people will be able to hear me clearly. And so I've been really working on that, is just being able to slow down and be present with the book.
Yeah. Great. Good. Yeah. And you're working in, because a lot of our listeners are authors themselves, and some of them are considering narrating their own. You're working in a soundproof booth that was already set up at your work. Is that right?
Yeah. I just got lucky. I mean, I would be recording in this room, which isn't ideal because there's like trucks and cars going by and birds and but I'm recording at a soundproof booth at my work that has like padding on the walls. It's really helpful.
Yeah, great. And how can our listeners learn more about you and your writing? What's your website?
Sure, you could go to GinelleTesta.com. So it's GINELLETESTA.com. But I'm mostly on Instagram. I think that's where I'm most active and posting a lot of my writing there too. So either place they can find me, or TikTok. I'm also Ginelle Testa on TikTok.
All right, great. And again, you can get Ginelle's audiobook, Make a Home Out of You, a memoir, on Amplify Audiobooks. That's coming up, should be live by the time this episode goes live. So check it out there. Ginelle, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.